Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Stock Market Today. It's Coram and Justin Nielsen here with a breakdown of the action in today's session, where we saw a lot of red come into the market today, Justin, with Bullard of the Fed kind of spooking the market a little bit with his thoughts on rate hikes.
Yeah, so this market has been really resilient, but it didn't kind of last today, especially at the end of the day after Bullard's comments. But we'll go over a couple stocks that were looking interesting, including Albemarle, Iridium Communications, and Boston Scientific.
All right, we'll take a look at those stocks. But first, let's take a look at the major indexes. The NASDAQ today finishing down 1.8%, the worst decliner of the day, followed by the S&P 500 down 1.4%. The Dow was off 1.25%. Small caps, the least hard hit today, with the Russell 2000 down 0.7%. And we did kill a winning streak that we had going on, Justin. And resistance coincided right around that round number at 12,000 for the NASDAQ.
Yeah, that's been an issue here lately. And again, look, we've come up quite a ways in January. We had this pullback, and we've been making some progress. So it's fine for us to kind of pause here. But so far, I feel like the story of the day has been the resilience that the market has shown. News comes out, and it just kind of shakes it off, and and ends up closing higher for the day. And it looked like that was going to happen today too. We had a lot of inflation data coming out, PPI numbers that spooked the market, but we were well on our way to reduce those losses and get in the upper part of the range. Of course, one of the things that happened was Bullard started speaking and talking about 50 basis point hike is still in the cards. Now he's a non-voting member, so he does tend to be very hawkish, but it still was enough to kind of, at the end of the day, maybe we didn't quite have the time to show the resilience this time around and recover.
Right. And I know something the team has said, Justin, is that the Fed isn't really going to like it if the market gets too hot, right? That's kind of not really the vibe that they're going for if they're trying to, crush inflation.
Yeah, it's it's not a balancing act that I would want to be involved with. I mean, they really have to kind of thread the needle on this, because inflation is certainly the number one priority. That's what they want to really kind of dampen. But they've got very few tools to do it, right? They've just got that monetary policy, and it's easier for them to backtrack and ease if they over tighten, later, than have inflation get entrenched. So
Right.
that's always been their story. Again, I think the market has been showing quite a turn. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, just the fact that we've been trending above the 21-day moving average line on the NASDAQ composite, and that growth has come on so strong, I think
Hmm.
is showing, a difference for the market as
Right.
opposed to what we saw most of last year. But after such a strong January, I think it's normal for us to kind of have a little bit of a consolidation period here,
Right.
and don't expect the rest of the year to be like January.
Exactly. That's such a good point. And yeah, if we didn't know the headlines, still seems pretty normal. Resistance where you would expect it, holding above levels that we want to be holding above if it's still going to be a strong uptrend. So we really can't complain about getting down days here and there, right?
Yeah, that's just part of the game, And if you can't handle a down day every now and then, you've got to find another business.
Hmm. So true. Let's also take a look at the S&P 500. It's still holding its 21-day line as it consolidates. And with the strong January that we saw, as you said, Justin, could be good to still see stocks consolidating and forming bases if we still see a strong uptrend, but a really tightened coil that could be a good springboard for stocks, right?
Absolutely. And one of the things that we were talking about on IVD Live today, Ed was just mentioning how there was a lot to look at. And we've been seeing that more and more. I mean, he had a lot of news to cover. Granted, part of that is because we're still on
Hmm.
the
In
earnings
earnings
season,
season. Hmm.
right? And we're kind of up at the tail end of that. But man, it seems like every day there's a lot of stocks for us to cover in terms of stocks that are setting up, looking strong, continuing with the strength. And one of the things that we keep on saying on the show is, oh man, things are looking extended here, extended here. So, just the fact that we're getting stocks looking extended as opposed to everything looking horrible, or very limited segments participating, I
Yeah.
think again speaks to a better market. Now, again, it can't go up every day, so you do have to temper that enthusiasm, and have days like today that
Yeah.
kind of give you the next chance for opportunities. Pullbacks aren't necessarily a bad
Right.
thing.
Right, exactly. And overall, as you mentioned, a huge change in tone this year, in a positive way that is continuing. And we also want to
Yeah,
take a look at the Dow. This has been the laggard, but still in the same trading range for the most
yeah,
part that it's been. So not breaking down, not breaking out, but we'll be
mhm,
on watch for both. And let's also take a look at the Russell 2000. Here's IWM, still holding above its highs from late last year that coincided with a bounce off of the 21-day line.
yeah. So again, I think basically we're starting to ignore the Dow Jones Industrial Average again,
Yeah, you
and
see how I
really.
just like didn't really stop.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you made the exact right point. It's in a trading range. You'll see if it breaks out or breaks down. But I think right now, what we're really focused on is the S&P 500, the Nasdaq,
Mhm.
and even the small caps, to see if it can just kind of break the downtrend of this
Right.
short little pullback that we've had. And so
Mhm.
far, we've kind of tested the upper part of that trend line, but we haven't really broken above it with gusto yet.
Mhm. Exactly. Okay, and now let's see how interest rates and the dollar reacted with that talk later on in the session. Maybe we could see what it looked like. It looks like maybe we're missing a little bit of data from the end of the day here, but nonetheless, we did see the 10-year yield tick up a little bit more. So I mean, you talked about a resilient market. It has been resilient in the face of these rising rates. But Justin, at the end of the day, we know what happens in general when we see a rising rate environment and how that can put a damper on the stock market.
Yeah, that's usually horrible for growth. And for as much as I mean, you were showing that intraday, and I think you were expecting that things would have been worse. I'm looking at some real time numbers, and it really didn't. It
Hmm.
really didn't get that bad. Now, I mean, maybe the it's not reflecting, because the bond market closed early
Yeah.
or something. But
Look
um,
at CPVT.
it's it certainly wasn't going crazy with
Hmm.
a lot of this. So what's more important is that you have seen this trend lately, of kind of that rise in yields, and that does tend to put a damper on growth. So it's something that you have to be aware of. Just flipping over to the dollar, we have seen more strength in the dollar. That can
Hmm.
sometimes make commodities a little bit more attractive, but it's something that can put pressure on on the multinationals, when they have to do those conversions of currencies, that can make it a little bit tougher on them. But it's at the end of the day, I think you can really just pay attention to the stock market prices, and kind of figure out, okay, what's happening here, what's happening with the animal itself, rather than trying to go too much with the theory and too much on the variables. Sometimes just looking at the stocks themselves and what's happening
Right.
is, at the end of the day, that's what's going to matter. It's
It
the price
is.
of the stock that's going to be
Hmm.
what moves our portfolio.
Yes, context matters, but really
Yeah.
underneath the surface is the best place to keep the finger on the pulse of what's going on in the market. And so, speaking of, let's take a look at some stocks, including Albemarle, with a nice upside reversal here today, up almost 5%. Some strong volume here, breaking above a downtrend in its handle. And this is after it reported earnings. I'm going to turn on a little feature here in MarketSmith so we can get those
Mhm.
numbers to show up on the screen there.
Yeah, so some really powerful numbers here, and I think they might have missed a little bit on some of their expectations, but they also gave guidance. And I mean, again, it's hard to argue against numbers that are in the triple digits.
Right.
Some very positive comments by the CEO, and things that they're doing. Again, this is a big lithium player. Also with bromine, and very very important for the EV market. The
Hmm.
things that they do. So Albemarle, had been, if you go back to that weekly chart real quick,
Sure.
this was one of the big leaders, in 2020, and was still continuing to rise in 2021. And then it's been going sideways for quite a while, a lot of back and forth action. But certainly today's action was very promising. Whenever you have kind of like a break of a downtrend, a short little downtrend in a handle, that's something that we like to see. And I mean, it's kind of hard to call this a handle, but it's maybe handle adjacent. And not quite getting picked up by pattern recognition, but I think the spirit is there.
Hmm.
And these earnings can often act as a catalyst to start new moves. So what we'll be looking for now is to see, hey, can we follow up on today's move? Can that strength continue? And
Hmm.
that was one of the reasons why we put this on Swing Trader today.
All right. And one more thing that I find pretty interesting is if we go back over to the weekly
Yeah.
chart, is you can see Albemarle clearing resistance that touches many points going back to its high that it achieved in late 2021. So maybe it's right around those levels now, but it does seem like we're seeing a lot of buying demand coming into this stock, and especially today on that really strong earnings report.
And that's one of the things that I like about that pullback is instead of going straight through that level, which would have been tough, if I saw that going from 208 all the way through 300, that would have given me a little bit of concern. But the
Hmm.
fact that we did have that pause and really held that 21-day moving average line very well, that makes me feel a little bit better. I think of it as a platform from which
Hmm.
Albemarle can potentially launch from.
Yeah, and I mean it's hard to argue with. Not only do you have acceleration, but just huge, huge, huge growth. So it'll be interesting to see how this one trades throughout the remainder of the year. Go ahead.
Not to belabor the point, but to what you're saying about those huge numbers, it's nice that we see on MarketSmith the actual raw data here too, because
Right.
sometimes you can look at that triple digit and you can say, well, wow, this is impressive. It
Hmm.
was up, 200-300%. But
Off
then you
teeny
look at it
tiny
and it's like,
numbers.
yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, you're up, 4 cents over 1 cent.
Yeah.
That's not as meaningful. These are some big numbers here. This is not just your pennies. So that's
Hmm.
pretty impressive. And same thing with the sales. This is in the billions of
Right.
dollars. For the quarter. So this is not just coming off
Yeah.
of very small numbers. So even more
Hmm.
impressive because
Yeah, some massive, massive growth. All right, let's take a look at IRDM, a standout in the market today as well, with a nice bounce after a pullback to its 50-day line. The gain coming in just shy of 3.9% and some strong volume behind the move as well. This stock was also moving on earnings today, Justin. And talking about big numbers, look at the estimates here for
yeah.
IRDM.
And that's pretty unusual, right? Because for the most part, when you're looking at estimates, a lot of the estimates looking forward have been pretty dismal on a lot of companies that we're looking at. You're seeing some red there in a lot of companies. So the fact that there's triple-digit growth expected here is pretty impressive. And of course, they do have this partnership with Qualcomm
Hmm.
that a lot of people are keeping their eyes on. And for more information on this, I really recommend people read the Stock of the Day today. That was done by Reinhard Kraus, and it really kind of outlines what Iridium is looking at. And we always, try and when we're kicking the tires on things, kind of show things that are not just positive but could be potential obstacles here.
Hmm.
But that's definitely something to look at. Now we did kind of test early on. We came down, but then came right back to finish with a strong bounce off that 50-day moving average line. And this is one that actually got added to leaderboard today. So another strong move on earnings. Earnings again can be a strong catalyst for
Yes.
stocks, and especially when you see that move start, and then you see it continue. So a good place to be looking for potential breakouts and pullbacks reversing their trends is on those earnings moves.
Yeah, no doubt. And last but not least, let's take a look at BSX. This is Boston Scientific, which is testing support at its 50-day line. Will that be a launching pad for this stock? We'll have to see. It's in the medical products group. And Justin, this is one that you covered on the podcast this week with Brian Shannon.
Yeah, it was a really interesting discussion. I'm just going to warn people, very video heavy. So this is not one that you necessarily want to listen to in the car. I would recommend watching it because Brian Shannon, we let him drive, and he loves charts. He's very good at the technical analysis, and he was showing a lot of charts and specifically how to use anchored VWAP, and it's really amazing when he shows you how he uses this and how accurate it can be in terms of predicting where support and resistance levels are. Of course, he has a new book out on the anchored VWAP that is really good. But one of the things that I thought was interesting is going back to his first book that I read of his about multiple time frames, is how Boston Scientific, Brian Shannon was bringing up how if you look at different time frames, let's just go ahead and take a step back to the weekly real quick.
There's the
And
daily. Here's
yeah,
the
you can see we're getting
weekly.
support at that 10-week line. And you draw this line back around 46 where we're at, and you see, oh man, we're really kind of we kind of hovered there last month, and got some resistance there, and now we're breaking through it. That resistance can potentially act as support now.
Right.
But what was amazing is that this line, as strong as that resistance level is and hitting those points, if you go back to the monthly, you see that this is actually
Even
going
further.
all the way back. No, actually, you know what? I'm going to say go back even
Even
further.
further.
We're going to go all the way back to
Wow.
2004, and you're hitting some levels from there. So this is something where, again, Boston Scientific has had a strong move since 2012, but it's really kind of consolidated for a long time here over the last few years. So what? Look, they're a giant. They have so many really innovative products, and yeah, we'll see if they
And some
can,
cool robots,
yes,
that
right.
are
So
doing backflips and stuff.
all sorts of things. So yeah, this is something that I think it's very interesting looking at those multiple time frames and seeing how this is something that is potentially setting up to conquer some long-term resistance. And if it does, we'll see how far it can go.
Yes, a great look there at some stocks to watch. And that is it for today's show. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We really appreciate you joining us. Make sure you catch IBD Live tomorrow morning, where we will be joined by Ryan Pierpont. He'll make his return to the show. Multiple top 3 finishes in the U.S. Investing Championship, and he's really focused on growth stocks. So we'll have to see what's been on his radar as the market has kicked things up a notch in 2023. You can also catch us on Barron's Live at noon Eastern tomorrow, where we will be talking about how ETFs can supercharge your portfolio. You can get all the information on that at barrons.com/live. Looking forward to that discussion as well. So a lot going on as we look towards wrapping up the week, but more fun to come. So we hope you join us, and we'll see you there. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you in the morning.